Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dave Emmons Show. And today we have a real special guest that I honor this guy. I've been watching his work and all the 29 books that he's gotten written. I'll tell you what, one book for me was a killer. But we're also being syndicated through WDY Radio out of Maryland. And that's Eddie Carson's. And that's Odyssey Radio Live. So if you want to tune into that when the audio version gets put out there, probably be next week sometime. The video version I'll be putting out pretty quick, pretty shortly. So I'll be doing that. But my special guest today is Preston Dennett, 29 books. Also, I have a special guest with us, and that's Dolly. And let me see here. It's Dolly Safran, and she'll be talking in the first half hour here about her experiences. And that's what Preston wrote the book. One of the books about was Dolly. So Preston Dennett, he began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986 when he discovered that his family, friends, and coworkers were having dramatic, unexplained encounters. And that's how I kind of found out. Since then, he has interviewed hundreds of witnesses, a lot of work, and investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomena. He is a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON. A lot of people understand and know that. A ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, and author of, he says here, 28 books, but it's 29 now, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. And more than 100 articles about UFOs and paranormal. Several of his books are Amazon UFO bestsellers, and I've been following that. And that's the truth. I see that quite a bit. His articles have appeared in numerous magazines, including Fate, Atlantis Rising, MUFON, UFO Journal, Nexus, Paranormal Magazine, UFO Magazine, Mysteries Magazine, Ufologist, and Phenomena Magazine, and many others. LA Times and LA Daily News, the Dallas Morning News, and other newspapers he's been on. So he's been across the wide spectrum of media, so you should know his name just by saying Preston Dennett. In ufology, he's up there, and he's one of the foremost authorities on all these subjects of abduction and UFOs and ETs. And he lives in California, and he works there. He does a lot of research. He's still researching, still writing. Amazing guy. And kudos to you, Preston Dennett, and Dolly Safran. Nice to have you on the show. Preston, would you like to elaborate on any of that?
Hey, that was a pretty thorough introduction. I appreciate it. Yeah, I've been at it for now 35 years, most of my life. I'm obsessed. I'm not going to lie.
Right. But no, it's I've had experiences that long, but I haven't written or investigated that long. I was in MUFON for a short while as field investigator. I got a little taste of that. But why don't you tell us a little bit? We're going to cover two of your latest books. And of course, being an Amazon bestseller, all of his books are exciting, but we've got two of the books, and Symmetry is one of them that he wants to talk about now. And could you start us off on that book, Preston, and work our way into having Dolly commenting?
Yeah, thanks. It's called Symmetry, a true UFO adventure. It's all about the experiences of Dolly Safran, who's with us tonight. Dolly contacted me in 2016. She was looking for someone to help get the word out, tell her story. And as soon as we started talking, I'm like, wow, Dolly's story is a bit different from pretty much the vast majority of people I've spoken with who have a lot of fears surrounding their encounters, many who have missing time, a small minority who have used hypnosis, hypnotic regression, which I think works. I mean, it's a valid tool for sure, but I kind of shy away from it because there are controversies surrounding it.
Yeah, we got to be concerned about planting a seed. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. But as Dolly and I spoke, she was pretty wary at first, a little hesitant, like all the people I've interviewed pretty much. They test the waters with me. But as we spoke, it became clear to me that her case was easily, and I'll underline that, the most extensive case of UFO contact I've ever had the privilege to research.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, she has had fully conscious contact since age 14, contacts really since she was 1 year old, younger, and describes very extensive encounters, onboard experiences, actually going to other planets, being on board motherships, I guess you would call them.
Mm-hmm.
So she was really able to fill in a lot of the blanks, answer a lot of the questions I had about UFO contact, which I had long ago decided was benevolent. They're not here to hurt us,
Right.
or take over, or eat us for lunch, or anything like that.
I
But
agree.
Dolly really filled in answered a lot of the questions I had.
Anytime that I guess, Preston, you want Dolly to jump in and start telling us a little bit, is that what you want to do?
Yeah, Dolly. That's why I really wanted to have her on the show, because I can talk all the way to the cows come home about Dolly, but hearing firsthand from the witness, I think, is a real treat. So yeah, Dolly, let it rip. To talk about, I guess, whatever you want, but how you first became conscious of contact. I think that's a cool story.
And Dolly, I must ask you, Preston is a nice guy, and no doubt he really relaxed you during your interview, because that's what the talent is all about, is getting the experiencer to relax enough to tell their story. And I think, Dolly, you felt that Preston has done that well. Continue on, Dolly.
Okay, I'll elaborate that on a little bit. Preston did get me to stay calm enough to talk to him. I was wary of every investigator out there when I first started looking for someone. I had become despondent, and my contact had actually given me his name and said, go look him up. He's the one we think you'll do well with. And when I saw his video, I emailed him. He emailed me back within 24 hours, and it just began. And he's an easygoing, very nice, very honest human being who tells the truth. And he reports as he learns what it is. And he's very good at vetting. And I'm just excited to have had him write the story for me. I wouldn't trust anybody else with it. Let's put it that way.
That's great.
I am a lifetime contactee. I'm a generational contactee. My father and mother, probably my mother, we're not positive about that. Definitely my father, generationally. I was aware that something was happening. I was aware that contact was happening, but it wasn't fluid. It wasn't constantly in my mind, and I couldn't remember everything all the time. I had big blackouts, and for a while I thought I was losing it. And might need a doctor. And when I was 14, I decided that I was going to prove it to myself one way or the other. And I had an opportunity to show up one night. I was out with my telescope. I took astronomy classes at the Miami-Dade Transit Planetarium, and doing homework 1 o'clock in the morning. And my dad's like, go to bed, it's a school night. And so I did. I packed down and got jammies on. I was looking out my window because I don't hardly sleep. And just staring at Orion. Orion was up that night. I love Orion. It's my favorite constellation. And just admiring the sky. And next thing I know, there's 100 lights up there that are not stars. And I thought, wow, and then it hit me. Oh, this is it. Here we go. Chance. Yeah. And I started memorizing everything. I mean, I have a photographic memory. So I was literally photographing second to second to second everything that was happening to me that night. And I watched it come down out of space into the atmosphere. It changed color as it did. Multiple times it changed, and then it came down to over our property. There were 2 of them actually. All the 100 of them split up into 2, and then they went east, west, north, and south. The one pair that came down over our area, one went toward Dadeland Mall, which is in Kendall, off Kendall Road. And then the other one came out over us, which we're in the Glades, the Everglades. And Florida. It came over our property, and it started coming down over the back of our house. And when it reached the tops of the tree level, I realized that the trees were wildly swaying, and there was no wind that night, none. And I was like, oh my God, no sound. I can hear at this point some kind of a weird low hum in the back of my ears, but no real apparent, real loud sounds. I'm staring at it, and I realize it's a metallic vehicle, a craft. And I started memorizing it. I was looking at it from the bottom first and seeing all the detail of that, and then working my way up it. And when I got to the portholes, there was a being in each one. And I don't have any memory of these guys, and it freaked me completely out. And I thought, no, not yet. And I turned. I was going to dive under my bed, and I never made it. My room exploded in blue white light, and I froze, and my memory went boom, and I woke up about 3:34 in the morning on the floor of my room, wearing somebody else's jammies inside out and backwards, and I was PO'd because I didn't remember what happened to me at that moment. I was like confused. I was dazed. I was out of it. I felt funky, and I could hear my mom in the kitchen. And it's a school day for me, and I go to school early, so I got in the tub, got cleaned up, put on clean clothes, went in the kitchen. My mom said, make coffee. And now I'm losing my mind because it has dawned on me that I am not wearing my jammies. It's somebody else's.
Could I ask you, did those
Sure.
jammies come? I know pajamas are jammies. I know young people call them jammies.
Yeah.
Did those jammies come from anybody else in the household, or did they
No,
somewhere else?
no, they're totally somebody else's.
Really?
My mom was a good seamstress, and she sewed all our pajamas, and they were not no.
Yeah.
I was freaking by this time, okay? I was starting like, oh my God, I got to talk about this. This is real. I can feel it coming on me that this is a real situation. And the radio was on. I made coffee. I sat down. My mom got her back to me. She's cooking. And I'm like, Mom, did you guys see anything last night? Did you see lights? Did you hear anything? Did the wind whip the windows? Something. And she turned around and looked at me and said, what are you talking about? And I said, UFO. And this freaks her out when I say this word. She doesn't like it. We have a lifetime of occurrences in our house and around us. And she said, no, shut up, which meant no talking. No. And I thought, crap, I got to talk about this. And I was mulling it over in my head. How do I breach this where she's going to listen to me? Okay. The radio was on. It was Paul Harvey. And it suddenly went to the news. And the very first thing out of the broadcaster's mouth was, 2 Dadeland police officers saw UFOs last night about 1:30 in the morning, and they described the whole thing. I lost it. I jumped up. I started jumping up and down. Oh my God, it's real. Oh my God, and I said, you got to listen to me, blah, 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 and she's like, she whirled on me at this point, and she went, get out of my kitchen. I don't want to hear it, which meant we're done. No talking to this, my mom, no. And I thought, oh my God. And I ran out the door, smacking into my father, who was trying to come in. And he's like, Dolly, you got to calm down. You're over the top. What the hell's going on? And I'm like, Dad, and he's like, oh no, I got to eat. I got to go to work. Go calm down. And so I went in the bathroom. I turned the light out, shut the door, and locked it because it's the only private room in our house. Nobody dares cross that threshold when you're in there. And I sunk to the floor, and I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And I thought, okay, replay it in your head. Photographic memories are great for that, and I started replaying it second by second by second. I watched the whole thing in my memory, and when I got to where the blue light hit me, the blue white light, my memory dink, and I remembered, and it slammed me like somebody hit me in the head with a mallet. I got nauseous. I started whirling. I was like remembering tons all at once, like a hurricane in my head. It physically made me ill, and I realized that I went on board with these 2 beings. They came down in an energy ribbon into my room, and one walked over to me. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move, and he took me by the hand and he whirled me around, and he walked me or floated me, I'm not sure about that to this day, and put my hand on that energy ribbon with his hand on the top, and the whole room changed on me. It all went opaque, bright white light. I felt light, and we went up this energy ribbon right through my ceiling, which freaked me out, right through the tree outside my room, and up alongside this craft, which had an open port in it at this time. And just as my feet crossed the lip of it, came above it, he shoved me in. Boom, shoved me in, sorry. And I landed on my keister. They came in behind me, and it changed it. The door shut. It just suddenly was there, okay? I'm sitting there whirling from this event, and I feel somebody sitting to my left. And I looked over, and this woman, and all of a sudden, bam, in my head, I knew who she was. It was, she's a tall gray. I call her Mama. I've known her my whole life. I met her first time when I was almost 6. And I was like, oh shit, I know where I am. I know who I am. I know what this is. Oh my God. and I puked all over myself when that thought hit my head. I just and threw up.
Could you describe that tall gray? Like
She's slender. She's almost 6'2". I outweigh her right now. She's probably about 130 pounds, maybe 120. Very long arms and hands. She has 4 fingers, not 5. You know, she's missing the pinky part.
Mhm.
She is got blue-green eyes, big blue-green eyes, and no hair anywhere. Her skin is not pink like us. It has a like she's never been in the sun. You know, we're pink because we have a little bit of sun on us all the time. She's kind of grayish white colored, you know, no sun. And she had no eyelashes, no nothing. I mean, when I looked at her eyebrows, there were none. There's just a, you know, a ridge. And in her eyelashes where you would have hair sticking out, she's little teeny, you can see where a follicle would go, but there's no follicle. There's no hair coming out of it. So you could see little bumps going across, you know, her eyes. She had a small mouth, small aquiline nose, very small, and her ears are mostly fled up against her head. She has they have, you know, like we do, they have a cartilage out there, but it's not as big as ours. It's more flat to her head and it's smaller. She does have teeth. I don't describe them to people because it's it can make some people nervous. They have very sharp teeth and they have more teeth than we do. And it's basically because they eat meat, more meat than we do. Their diet consists of more protein and they eat meat. She's female, definitely female. She has, you know, breasts and hips, but she's more slender. And she's completely telepathic. She doesn't enunciate or use her voice very often. When she does, it's hard to understand. You know, it's their language. She can use her language in her voice box, but not like we can use ours. She's extremely intelligent. Her head is bigger than ours. I have a really big head. I have a really big forehead. And I don't know if from the light, I try to hide it, but if you can see, I've got a V ridge in my forehead.
Yeah, so I only got 5 hairs on the top of my head.
Yeah, see? Yeah.
No, I know Preston
probably. V-ridge indent. Yeah, I know that's a hybrid thing. I've got to, if I don't have the makeup on my forehead, you can really see it. I have a serious, and she's got the V ridge in her forehead, all the way up to the top, up here. She has, her face is more, my face is more square than hers. She has more of a, you know, V-shaped face, long.
Did you try to talk to her? Did you try to speak to her?
I do speak to her, and but it's all telepathic.
Yeah.
And every now and then when she says my name, she'll sometimes think it and say it at the same time. They have a name for me. I'm called Oora, and she can say that, and she calls me Oora, you know, like that. And they do roll their R's, and she's just really sweet. She's been my liaison, my caretaker. When I'm with them, she's mama to me. She makes sure, because I've known her since a very small child, she makes sure that I'm well taken care of. She does that for others like me, and she's mama.
Yeah, I'm sure Preston has covered this, and I know he probably knows a lot more about this than I do about talking to all the abductees. I'm an abductee too, but similar stories. Do you feel that when you were taking from the bed and you went into this little swirl up, do you feel it was your whole physical body, or was it your essence? Or
no, it's my physical body. The whole thing goes. Yeah, I have. I'm how do I describe this? I'm really, really psychic, okay? And I'm really capable of understanding where I am, what I am, and how I am anywhere. I've also been able to OBE since I was a very small child. I know when I'm astral and when I'm not. And there's techniques that you can use to remind yourself when you're physical and when you're not. And I always check. There's Preston knows a whole bunch of ways to do that. And I laugh when I hear him talking about it because, yes, I've done it. I've stuck my finger in my eye. I've pulled my chin. I've bit myself. I've done things to prove that I'm physical when I'm physical. So, yes, I am physically on board that craft.
Well, we know it's a physical experience because there was an experience she had at age 2 where she was missing from the house for, what, 2 hours?
Yes, 2 full hours. Yeah.
Age 2. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I started disappearing from the house really, really young. When my mom was pregnant with my brother, I was supposed to be napping, and so was she. and she came in to check on me. I was gone. Now I'm in a house that's locked, okay? And she called my dad. They called the police. They went looking for me. They had an APB out on me. They couldn't find me anywhere in the neighborhood. They were becoming hysterical. And about 2 hours later, somebody from the police department told the car that my mom was riding in with them to go to a Utotem store on Miller Road in Miami, which was about 6 miles from where we lived. And there I was sitting on the countertop, freaking out. And the guy was like, here's your kid. I walked in. I can remember going with them, and they promised me a balloon if I managed to get myself into the store. Okay, I had a thing for red balloons, and so I said okay. And when they let me off behind the store in Miami in those days, there's nothing around hardly. Okay, and I wearing nothing but underwear, bare feet. Went up to the doors and tried to push myself in, but it was too big, heavy for me. I couldn't. So I started banging on the door. And the guy saw me. He's like, "Oh my God, there's a kid out there!" And he went and got me and brought me in. And couldn't. I was so hysterical over being there and wanting my balloon that I didn't tell him. I knew who I was. I said my name Dolly to him, but I didn't know my address really yet. And yeah, I learned it pretty quick after that. But
that's not the only time either. I mean, once
no.
you were taken from your school and your classmates were all looking for you, and
yeah,
where were you?
Yeah, my PE teacher had a thing for, if you don't, I'm kind of a wild card, okay? And I didn't always want to do what they told me to do. And I would go off and do my own thing. And one day he said, "We're on the field." He was punishing me. It's a big field. And they didn't notice that I disappeared on the field. Just boop, I was gone. And they were hysterically looking for me. Where the hell did she go? They had the principal, the coach, who learned not to like me for this. And yeah, I just suddenly showed up about, I don't know, an hour after they started looking for me. Yeah.
Let's see if I can connect the dots. You were saying that you're a hybrid, and then you
Yes.
call this a tall gray mother. Do you
Yes.
feel that that was your real mother or whatever,
No.
or part of your mother? No.
No, I'm part. She says I'm related to her, which I've learned since then. Yes, I have some DNA from them, and her DNA would be mine, integrated into my DNA. I'm not fully my mother's child. When you see my DNA, I'm missing segments,
Mm-hmm.
and they know it. And that would be them. I have tall gray blood, and I also have Nordic, or Same. They call it Same, Nordic, Swedish, Nordic.
Preston, they generally mix 3 or 4 different DNAs into a hybrid sometimes. Is that what you found out, Preston?
That does turn up in a few cases. It's not always clear because people don't know, but it's a question I've learned to ask of contactees is, tell me about your genetics. Do you know anything unusual? And yeah, I hear all kinds of stories. Like one gentleman from Utah says, yeah, I had my ancestry done and found out that almost all my DNA comes from his father. He has uniparental dysautomy, I think it's called. It's a very rare condition. And I hear all kinds of stuff about unusual genetics among contactees. And one quick point, Dolly does not call herself an abductee.
Really?
She's invited on board.
Okay.
Right. I'm a contactee. Everybody is a contactee. Y'all just don't realize it yet.
Yeah.
You don't know the reasons why. Yeah.
Right. They say 50% of the people don't even know they've been abducted or a contactee. But going back to your school, when you disappeared, do you remember somebody coming and getting you and taking you away?
Yeah, I have memories of seeing the craft, and then suddenly I'm not on the ground anymore and I'm up in the craft. Yes.
Okay.
And that's pretty much all I remember until I came back, and I ended up, wasn't out on the playground when they brought me back. They dropped me back in the back of the school where the cafeteria is, and I walked in through the cafeteria. So yeah.
Do you remember any time that they ever tried to erase your memory, like with light or anything like that?
No. I've being a contactee is an interesting situation because there are several reasons why we don't remember. I've learned this as an adult and older, being taught by them. One of them is electromagnetic radiation can deraz how you think. In other words, it can cause your memory to fail. Okay, so that's one of the issues with contactees. Your memory is going to go and hang up on you. In other words, your physical memory, your brain memory, your consciousness memory is all there, who you are. It's activated and on, and you would remember if you could contact or be in contact with your consciousness. Most people don't understand that your consciousness is who you really are. Your brain is just a facilitator for you to indwell this body and operate. You have a pineal gland in your brain that connects the two of you together. Okay, it's like yin and yang. If you're not using your innate abilities, or your pineal gland isn't operating properly, you're going to forget what you just did. Physically forget. Your physical mind is not going to remember it. Okay, and that's basically what's happening to you. The other thing is that the more psychic you are, the better you do remember, because you're able to contact your consciousness and remember. That's why some people have very vivid memories and some do not. That's what's happening. Exactly.
It sounds like you've done some self-study and also some research in what was going on with you, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
I
Well, I was
know.
lucky in that they taught me. I'm taught by them. I went to school with them since I was a small kid.
Yeah.
Those memories are intact for me now. I remember them all. And I developed my psychic ability naturally from a small age until I got older. And then I really went at it after that, because I had to catch up with what I didn't understand yet. So, yeah.
Wow, that's very impressive. And Preston, I can see why you wrote a book on this contactee, actually. So I'll have to remember not to say abductee too much here
Thank
now.
you.
So yeah, contactee, same thing. I think we all, I think when we are, they call it abduction, but it's really not. I think you actually kind of give permission in a way. Is that what you're saying,
Of
Dolly?
course you do. Yeah, if you outright tell them you don't want anything to do with them and to leave you alone, they will. They won't touch you again. They won't come near you again. Most people agree to it because they get excited when they realize what's really going on, and it's like, woo, okay, you know. The main message, the reason that I've come forward like this is that ET has three things they want us all to know. The first one is wake up, and that means using our abilities so that we can connect to them easily. Our pineal glands are all gummed up with all kinds of stuff like
Right.
fluoride and negativity and all kinds of stuff. And we're not used to being psychic or openly psychic because we've been talked down from it. And then the world has sort of thrown in fear and shame and all this other kind of stuff, and it's just degraded your ability, and you don't use it, and they want you to wake up to that and start to learn to use it, bust free from that. You should be operating this way. You should be a fully operating autonomous human being who has the ability to tap into the universal mind and hear everything that's going on, especially with each other. We
Right.
need to evolve, and you
Right.
can't do that without that ability, period.
Yeah, we're moving
Without
at
the
the bottom.
ability.
Moving at the bottom of the hour. It's so interesting what you're saying, Dolly. And we're talking to Preston Dennett, the author of the book Symmetry, A True UFO Adventure, and Dolly Safran giving her details and a great story. You're listening to the Dave Emmons Show, and we're radio syndicated through WODY Radio, and that's in Maryland, and that's OdysseyRadio.live. And we'll be right back after this short pause. Okay, we're right back already, and that was just a radio hold, and it's not a video hold. You could probably still see us on the screen. This is the Dave Emmons Show, and my special guest today is Preston Dennett, a 29 book writer. That's that says enough right there. And then Dolly Safran, who's given a very detailed description of being a contactee, not an abductee. And the book is Symmetry, like I said, a true UFO adventure, and it's about Dolly Safran. Nice to have you back. Is there anything that you want to say more, Dolly, or Preston? Do you want to add to that, or?
Well, she's just skimmed the very surface of her experiences. So, yeah, I mean, it would take hours and hours to describe. Every time I do an interview with her on a show like this, I learn something new. So,
Right.
to really cover her story.
Okay, Dolly. It's I don't know if you want to go into the second book
I would love for Preston to go into his book also. Read Symmetry, everybody. And I'm on YouTube, and I'm also on Facebook. You can catch me in Messenger, and just go from there. It's an interesting read, and it's informative, and I highly recommend it. It's hopefully my message that I'm bringing to you from the ET themselves will pan out. but Preston has a really good new book come out, and you should hear about it.
Yeah,
It's number 30, by the way.
yeah,
Okay.
Dolly Safran, great. You're detailed. You're intelligent. You've done some homework. You know about this contactee stuff, and you've been a great guest and a great witness to all this. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Okay. And then Preston, I guess we'll go to your other book, and that's Not From Here, Volume 4, Selected UFO Articles. You want to start off on something, touch on some really important, juicy points in this book, because you know how the time goes. I listened to Dolly, and it just went by so quick, the first segment. And yeah, you know the book, Preston Dennett, his book here. So you know the book. Tell us some of the juicy points of it.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. This is volume 4. So these are selected articles that I've written over the past 35 years of research, which aren't easily available. And these books are all about the unusual types of cases, what I would call the outliers, kinds that don't get a whole lot of discussion or perhaps not very well explored.
Right.
And this book has 10 chapters, each covering a different aspect of UFO contact, such as UFO car lift cases, encounters that happened on the 4th of July. One chapter that Dolly is actually in, I included her, and she inspired me to write this chapter, is called When Abductees Levitate. Because I was doing a research project on this after hearing how Whitley Strieber, the well-known contactee, had levitated, following an encounter. I thought, wait a second, didn't that happen to Stephen Greer? And I looked up his book, and sure enough, following his encounter, he levitated twice. And I remembered, well, gosh, I'm pretty sure Bud Hopkins, the famous researcher, author of Missing Time, had cases as well. And he did. There was 2 or 3 of them. So I dug deep and I found a bunch of them. And I was doing this research project. This is an article I wrote for a magazine. And I'm like, Dolly, because I was interviewing her at the time, I'm like, I don't suppose you've ever physically levitated, not up a beam of a UFO, but actually physically levitated. She's like, well, as a matter of fact, yes. And she's had, I think, three or 4, is it, Dolly?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So this is one of the chapters. And let's just hear Dolly describe one of her levitation experiences.
Did it happen in front of people?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The first one, I was a baby in my crib. I was about 10 months old, and I started levitating after I saw light through the window, and I made it to the top of my crib, and I flipped over because I'm freaking out. And I tried to go back down, and I used to sleep with my feet through the bars of the crib after that because I knew it was going to happen again, and I was trying to stop it. I also did it again when I was 2 years old. I was playing hide and seek with my mother, and I was trying really hard to have the best place to hide. And in Miami, the closets have a bottom closet with doors and then a top closet with doors. And I thought if I could just get up in the top of that thing, I would be so cool, and she'd never find me. And I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And the next thing I know, I feel like I'm being pushed up. Okay. Like I'm reaching up at the same time, being pushed up at the same time. And I went to the top of the closet and I threw the door open and went in. I crawled around, shut the door, and started laughing. I thought it was so funny. My mom did not. She was looking and she could hear me laughing. She didn't know where I was. She finally found me and freaked out because there's no way I could have got up there on my own without her. She used to tell everybody in our family this story over and over and over. I have a weird kid. Okay.
Yeah.
Another time that it was really important to me to be able to do this, I was painting our walls in our stairwell in our house, and I did a really good job, and I had 2 paint cans that I needed lids back on, and I was going to walk them down the stairs. When I stepped off the top step to go down to the next one, I missed, and I went straight out into midair. And I thought, oh no, this is it, I'm dead. And I somehow managed to not do anything except come down real slow. I made the turn and I made it to the bottom of the steps, which kind of turns. And all I did was slosh the paint, just a couple of drips. And when I landed, I was like, oh, thank God, I screamed though. My dad says I screamed when I did it. And he came running down there, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he sees me at the bottom with the two pancakes. He said, what happened? And I said, you don't want to know. He said, no, what happened? And I said, Dad, I think I just levitated. I went off the top step, and he's staring at me, and he said, wow, you could see where the paint went up against the wall, not the bottom, but on the wall where it sloshed out. And he said, oh my God. So yeah, I've levitated out of trees. I'll climb trees a lot when I was a kid, and I could go from tree to tree. I'd levitate from tree to tree. And
Do you feel a presence with you? Like there's something with you that helps you?
I'm able to do it. It's all me. Yeah.
Okay.
When I was really small, I first started realizing I could do the tree thing. I would go outside and I would lift my head and I'd think light, just light. And it's like catching an energy wind where you evacuate your body somehow. Your consciousness leaves the body and your body goes with you. Okay. And all I had to do was think light, and I went up, and I would go around for a while and then come back down. I couldn't, now when I was really young, I couldn't maintain it for more than 15 minutes tops, and when I'm with ET, I levitate all the time. It's just a natural thing. They all levitate. But here,
there's an important takeaway from these stories. I mean, there was another guy I interviewed, a military officer who levitated following his encounter, and several other cases like this. I think this speaks to what Dolly was talking about earlier. One of the messages from the ETs is to wake up and use your psychic abilities. People think of levitation as, paranormal and supernatural, but it's not. This is a natural human ability. I actually wrote a book on levitation, so that's kind of what got me interested in exploring this further.
Is there a metaphysical, solution to all this where your DNA is kind of charged with anti-gravity energy?
No.
Or no?
No, you're in a 3D heavy universe, okay? This is the third dimension, and all the particles that make all matter up are very densely packed together, okay? And as long as we're here, you're physical. But what you don't realize is that all matter is light. Everything is light, like real light, like a light. And if you're able to use your abilities, you see that, you see all the energy around you, and you're actually get to the point where you can actually become in the light. In other words, you go to the light, you become light, just like that. And your matter obeys what you're thinking and does what you want it to do. It's as simple as that. It seems complicated when you feel so heavy like we do, but it's not. You can become lighter because you're light, and you just go up into it.
That's how they moved all those stones for the pyramids. Is that right? Preston, were you done with the military officer levitation? How did he get started? He got he's a contactee from the military?
Yep, he's now quite elderly, but had contact since he was about 5 years old, which is the pattern. I think it probably goes even earlier, but most people don't remember. Some do. But yeah, as far as levitation, every time I bring this up to a contactee, I won't say every time, but as often as not, they will say, well, yeah, that actually did happen to me. I recently brought it up with Ray Hernandez, who's pretty prominent in this field.
Yes.
And he's like, oh, yeah, one of the guys I interviewed said that he's a contactee. His wife woke up and her husband, the contactee, was floating above his bed. I interviewed another lady, I think she's from New York. She said, yeah, my mom came walking in and there I was floating above the crib. She was just a tiny thing. Yeah. This speaks to a pattern I've learned, like who's having contact and why. Contactees, as a general rule, are extremely psychically gifted. And if they're not, they will be after they've had extensive contact, because this is a major ET agenda. That's
so
really
you think that people with psychic energy, they are a magnet to these ETs, and that's why they're being selected, right?
Yes, but I think it's a two-way street. There are people who are being contacted, and as a result, have a huge boost in their psychic abilities.
Mm-hmm. What about let's get to the UFO car lifting cases. What about those cases? Dolly, have you ever been lifted up in your car?
No, never needed to be.
Okay, but you talk about this in your book, Not From Here, Volume 4, Preston. So this, I heard about this phenomenon with a bunch of kids in a parking lot. I think it was in California, and they lifted up the car, and the kids jumped out. Is that part of your stories that you got?
Yeah, I mean, there's stories from all across the United States and the world. And I think the first time I heard about this was, gosh, I think it was 1988, 89, thereabouts, when the Knowles family of Australia were driving across the Nullarbor Plains.
Right.
And a UFO came down and lifted their car up. And there was, 4 people in the car and their 2 dogs. So
Mm-hmm.
a really very well verified story with damage to their vehicle. It blew off one of the tires. They were mercilessly ridiculed in the media. But that's the first time I heard of a car lift case. I did not know it was a thing. It was some years later in 1992. There was a huge wave over my hometown of Topanga Canyon in California. And that also involved a car lift case. A car was lifted right up off the road. And I started to pay more attention and started to collect these cases. And I think it was when I was writing UFOs over in Nevada that I found 3 cases in a row. And one really struck me was these 3 or 4 teenagers who were driving along through the desert outside of Goldfield, Nevada, near Tonopah, and had gotten stuck in the sand and could not get their pickup out. So they were like, we're going to have to walk out in the morning. And they started just talking, sitting there in the truck, and actually the subject of UFOs came up. And they thought about, wouldn't it be cool if we saw a UFO and they could help us? When one actually did come down. And that may sound, coincidental and synchronous, but they are actually listening. Dolly, yeah, she's nodding her head.
Yeah.
Will tell you this. And this UFO came down and lifted this pickup truck right out of the sand. And I have case after case after case of this. It's amazing that they do this. It can be very scary for people, I will say. And I'm still not entirely sure what the motive is here.
Well, I can tell you, I finally figured that out. Carlotta finally told me. I get the chance to tell you.
Oh, yay.
Okay.
It's to show everybody here that they're trustworthy, that if you're in trouble, they can help you. They're not out to destroy us, they're out to help us. And it's just one more display to the people everywhere, other than the governments, that it's okay, they're all right. If you see them, you can't don't fear them. It's not necessary. They're there to help.
Yeah, I'm writing a book now, Angels and Watchers, and I'm studying that a lot of times in ancient history, I think they confused angels with ETs or extraterrestrials. And I know Preston has probably studied that too. What you're saying sounds like an angelic type of intervention. Is that how you see it, Preston?
Well, I think that we're dealing with ETs, but I'm absolutely certain that a lot of angelic encounters were probably misinterpreted. And in fact, there's a lady up in Maine who had a long conversation with her adult hybrid son, gave her all kinds of information, and said at one point that who you thought were angels was us.
Right.
So yeah, I think I still think that there's probably angels out there, what we would think of as angels.
Spiritual, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to another, I guess, subtopic here in your book, Not From Here. It's Independence Day encounters, like the fireworks. Does that draw the UFOs here?
Yeah, I keep hearing about people saying, oh, I saw UFOs on the 4th of July. And I'm like, shut up. You saw fireworks. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
It's 2 days in the year that you really don't want to see a UFO, and that's April 1st or 4th of July.
Right.
Frankly, no one's going to believe you. But finally, I'm like, you know what? After I heard a really good case, I'm like, I'm going to look this up in the files of some of the UFO organizations, like MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, or NUFORC. And boy, did I get a shock when I found out that that is the single most common day to see a UFO. Reports spike hugely. So I buckled down and I looked at every darn report, which was thousands. And it became clear to me that some of these were fireworks, particularly sky lanterns,
Mm-hmm.
but absolutely not all of them. And frankly, it became pretty easy to tell the difference, because a sky lantern, which is, just a little candle inside of a paper sort of balloon,
Mm-hmm.
can only last for 15 minutes, can only reach a certain height, and certainly cannot dart across the sky, or has certain movements that give it away. And these are cases where people were describing metallic craft with portholes on ETs being seen, swooping down for the beginning of the fireworks show, watching the whole darn thing, and then darting away. Case after case of this.
Yeah, I wonder what they find so fascinating, I guess, with fireworks. The same thing we do, the glitter and the color and the energy maybe that's released. But now, as we get into this contactee thing, I know that once bitten, twice shy, and you're always alert for those types of things. So if you're consciously aware of what's going on around you, and you look up in the sky a lot, it says even in the Bible, it says, look up if you want to really see wisdom. So actually, you're more aware of your surroundings when you're a contactee. And I know Dolly probably knows this. She feels this. She's aware of different energies from different people, and probably the sky. She watches that quite a bit, looking for visitors. And Preston, you probably have researched that, and you know that a lot of contactees are always wide awake and wide-eyed alert.
Oh yeah, I was driving along with a contactee once, and she's like, "Stop the car!" I'm like, "What?" It's like, "I see something," and I could not believe she saw this tiny itty bitty little dot in the daylight sky. I'm like, "How did you see that?" She's like, "Always watching." And
yeah.
As far as 4th of July, real quick, yeah, I do think they're there to watch the fireworks, but I think there's another reason. There's a lot of people outside looking up during 4th of July, and this presents an opportunity for them to fulfill another one of their agendas, which is to basically announce their presence. Dolly had a 4th of July encounter, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, 2014, I was working at the zoo, my family zoo, and my cousin and I decided to take a day off. Zoo workers work 365, 24/7. We live there, and we needed a day. So we went down to St. Petersburg Beach. I was on the west coast of Florida, and we were out. And we watched the fireworks, and we went back in, and we went out again at 1 o'clock in the morning to go chase crabs with flashlights. I like to do that. It's kind of fun, and just to look at them running. And all of a sudden, my cousin said, "What is that?" And I turned around. It's south of us, straight south of us down the beach line, and I see the lights, and I turn around and go, "I don't know. What do you think that is?" I'm going to ask her because I know what it is. I'm looking at UFOs. And she was like this. She was like, and she's standing there, totally went blank on me. And I was like, "Oh, great. Okay." And I turn around and I'm looking at it, and I see 4 of them, and they're darting in, they drop down, they come back up, and then they shoot west again. Okay. And this is happening over and over and over. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? Okay. And I put it in my mind, who are you? What are you doing? And they heard me. And one of them broke off and shot straight up the beach line at us and hovered over me for a minute. And he sent me the message, "We're busy." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he went back down. And 15, 20 minutes later, I saw the last of them, and then they went away. And my cousin finally woke up, and she's going, "Ugh." And she said, "We got to go." I'm like, "What's wrong with you?" And she says, No, we're supposed to spend the night in this really great hotel. She said, "No, we got to go right now. It's 2:30 in the morning by then." Okay. And I said, "What's wrong with you?" She said, "No, we got to go." We went back up to the room. We packed our bags and went back to the zoo. She marched up the stairs and went to bed and did not remember anything the next day. And I was like, "Oh, great. Thank you so much." And it made me mad. So I was desperately looking for reports of those UFOs, and I found 3 of them on YouTube, and they've since been wiped. But I did report it, to MUFON, because I like to document stuff. I want them to know that it's happening. And
Right.
yeah. So that was our UFO on the beach.
And always alert. Dolly's always alert. It's great. Preston, now let's moving on in the book. You have UFOs that people have crashed into. They've actually had physical, I guess, car or body contact with a UFO.
Yeah, that was a very unusual type of case that I kept running into. I'm like, I don't think anyone's ever really cataloged these and studied them together, done a sort of comparative analysis. So I started pulling them all together, and I found a bunch of cases where planes have collided. Not a bunch, actually, it's statistically insignificant, I should say. And by that I mean, among the hundreds of thousands of UFO reports, there is literally only a handful, a dozen or so, where this has happened. But it has. There was a case of an airplane in Pixley, California, which apparently collided into some metallic object. The Air Force did their best to cover it up, but thanks to Donald Kehoe, Major Donald Kehoe, a true UFO investigative pioneer, he got the information out about this case. And I found several others, and that includes not only planes, but just as common would be cars. There was a very famous, well, I won't say famous, but somewhat well-known case in New York involving a lady by the name of Mrs. Funk, Nora Funk, I think it was, who had an object come and slam on the hood of her car and took off. And going through these, I found several cases. There was one case involving a train, found two involving boats. So really rare, but yeah, a number of people who are driving along and something swoops down out of the sky. In several of these cases, it's a small spherical kind of probe-like object.
I was going to ask you what size they were. Hitting the hood of the car, it had to be small, because if it was large, it would just completely demolish the car. Yeah. Yeah,
and there are actually one or two cases where people have struck a being. There was one guy, I think this was in Pennsylvania. He's driving along on his way back from work and saw a glow in the field, and looking, he saw a very tall kind of object hovering right above the field, and wasn't paying attention to where he was going, and saw movement in front of him. He's still racing along, right? And saw that there was these short little figures crossing the road, and they too did not appear to be paying attention to any oncoming traffic. And he screeched to a stop, but it was too late, and thump, he hit one of them. And he quickly pulled over and got out of his car and looked back and saw that they were not human, and became absolutely filled with fear and rushed home. And he did not want to tell anybody. He ended up calling his friend, who says, "You've got to call the police." They went back there. There were skid marks. There was good evidence. The car did have some damage, just a little bit, but they found no other evidence. It's a good case, and one of these, it's a really rare type of encounter, which is why I wanted to include it. It's definitely an outlier. They're much more likely to see a UFO land. I think there's probably more crash retrieval cases than there are of this. And this is an important point. And one last point I want to make is the recent congressional hearings described, these objects are a threat to our pilots. No, they're not. These objects may come close to the craft, but they're not going to strike them. These cases are, I'm going to underline this, statistically insignificant. The chances of this happening are close to zero. But I think there was enough cases that I thought, this is interesting. Let's take a closer look.
Yes, because the ET pilots are very, I guess, much ahead of us, and also their craft easy to maneuver, and they can come right up on you and then go right over you. So yeah, I can see where that is not a big problem, because I think the ETs and UFOs can maneuver around. I want to go to this fertilizer, ETs and fertilizer, Preston, and then I want to go to you, Dolly, on, are you still having events going on? And Preston, what is this thing about fertilizer?
Yeah, this is something that puzzled me for a long time, because it first came up with the Betty and Barney Hill case.
Okay.
And as their case was being researched, two investigators came and asked them flat out, "Did you have any fertilizer in your car?" And Betty and Barney are like, "What are you talking about?" No. And they're like, "Oh, well, wait a second, we did. They did have a bag of fertilizer in their car." And it always puzzled them as to why these researchers were asking them that.
Right.
This is even before they fully realized that they had missing time and were probably taken on board. And so looking back in hindsight, they wondered, is this a draw? were the ETs somehow interested in fertilizer?
Have you ever found out why? I mean, we're closing in on the last minute or so of our discussion. So I guess a real quick question: have you discovered why the fertilizer is attracting ETs?
Not in that case, but I did find there's a very famous case involving a UFO landing where ETs specifically asked for a bag of fertilizer. And when I heard that, I'm like, let's look into this. And I found another case where UFOs came over a fertilizer plant and hovered. They came over and started scooping fertilizer out. And some people who've gotten information on how to grow plants. So there is a connection there. It's tenuous at best.
Okay, I want to ask one last question. We're about done here. Dolly, are you still being bothered by ETs? Real quick, could you answer that?
I'm not bothered, and
okay, I used the wrong word. I'm sorry. Contact. Okay, contact.
They have pulled out. They haven't been here for a while now. It's about 1.5 years, almost 2 years straight.
Okay.
And it's because our magnetosphere is so far down and it's too easy to crash, and they're not going to keep putting themselves at risk for this.
Okay, we're done with. We're up to this. This is the worst part of being a host. I have to cut off a great stories and
yeah.
This is the Dave Emmons Show. We're being syndicated through WODY Radio, and that's out of Maryland. It's Eddie Carson's, and it's OdysseyRadio.live. And I've had a great pleasure having Preston Dennett here, and also Dolly Safran, a great witness to everything that's going on. Thank you and Preston. I keep up with your books. Your books are all over Amazon. People look them up. Symmetry and also Not From Here. That's what we've been talking about today. Thank both of you, Dolly and Preston. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.